I've known John a while. And for those of you who don't know, he and I have been married for 47 years.
47.
Yeah. But I don't think that you've done one of these stewardship presentations in a very long time. So it occurred to me, since I've got some inside intel, that it might be of interest to the rest of you. So I'm going to use the same set of questions that we've been using hitherto. And so tell us, John, how long you've been at Calvary and how did you come to be here?
Well, I think you know the answer to that, but I'll tell you anyway. After we got married, we lived in Somerset County for a couple of years, and then we relocated to Hunterdon County in 1979. Looked around for a church. Didn't take us too long. Well, the first Sunday we came to Calvary, the rector was Father Ed Sumner, and we showed up on the Sunday as newcomers, and 2 days later he came to our house to visit us, which was wonderful, and we were hooked. From that point on, we've been here at Calvary. All our 4 kids who are baptized here. It's a matter of disappointment to me that none of our kids right now, although they haven't renounced their faith, they're not practicing churchgoers on a regular basis. But they grew up here, they were part of the youth group, and we've been here pretty much ever since.
So I know that your faith journey has been kind of a storied one. What about it would you like to share with everybody here?
I thought about this quite a bit, and I'm not really quite sure what to say, but I would say the following. My faith journey, although it's been long in years, it's also been a little different. I was not raised an Episcopalian. In fact, I was raised the other end of the spectrum in terms of worship. I grew up in England in a very, very simple Christian community. I would say not unlike the Quakers over here. We had no minister, no priest. And that was my experience. And I was sort of dragged there by my parents. And it really wasn't until I was at university 15, 20 years later that through other friends, I started to look at the Anglican Church, and I went there a few times. But basically, my upbringing in the church was very nonconformist. I think what brought me to Anglicanism and becoming an Episcopalian, looking back, it was very much God's hand working, but I didn't see it quite that way at the time. I had been involved in campus youth ministry a little bit as a student in England, and when I came to the States, I was put in touch I came to Rochester, New York, and I was put in touch with someone who was doing youth campus ministry there in Rochester, and it turned out he was in training to become a priest. He was a deacon at an Episcopal church, and he was a great friend. He and his wife were great friends to me, and he said, well, why don't you come to our church? Well, guess who was in the youth group at our church when I showed up? Jean was in the youth group. That was her home church. We met up there, and I guess you say the rest is history.
One of the things that has struck me, because I get to comment, is that in England, the Anglican Church is the national church, and so one of the things that was very compelling as we work together then and now and in the as going forward is the amount of biblical knowledge that you had, partly because of your education, your public, your civic education as well as your religious education. So that was kind of interesting to me. The theme of stewardship this week, this year, is walk in love. And what does that suggest to you about stewardship and your relationship to God?
That's a big question. I think, first and foremost, what it says to me is that stewardship is not an obligation. It's not just about giving, but it's very much our response to our walk with God, our relationship with God. And whatever we do, as stewards, whether it's the giving of money, giving of our time or of our talents, and this has been a long learning experience for me. It's not something that you do out of duty or out of obligation, though I think sometimes it feels that way. But rather it's a natural response to an individual's love for God and wanting to follow God and do His will, and whatever that turns out to be. It may be God blesses us with great riches, maybe He doesn't. Maybe He blesses us with great talents, maybe He doesn't. But God has something in mind for each of us, and I think our stewardship walk is to do the best we can prayerfully to understand where God is calling us, where He's leading us, and then to follow.
Thanks, and thank you for the leadership you've given me and our children and everybody here.